like they used to. Can't place your bets on the 9 to 5. Things don't work like they used to. No, there's not enough to keep you alive.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Christian Reeve Podcast. Today's guest is a YouTuber and, most importantly, a philosopher, a modern day philosopher amongst us. His name is Quang. Welcome to the show. How you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you very much for having me, Christian.
It's a pleasure to have you here, man. You've got an interesting story. I want to kind of break it down first. I don't want to kind of do the big reveal just yet. I want to kind of like slowly go from the beginning to where you're at now. So for those who do know, you're going to have to wait a second. You had a remote job. What was that job in?
Yes. That job was in the cannabis industry in Canada. I led the procurement team there. So anything that came into the facilities, whether it be cannabis or machinery or other goods that would go into the products, that all fell under my umbrella.
Wow. And in which state? Is this in the United States? Yeah.
This is in Canada.
It's in Canada. Sorry,
yes, in Canada, the cannabis industry has been legal for, I want to say, almost 10 years now.
Oh, has it been that long?
It's grown significantly since then. Yeah.
God damn.
So it was quite interesting in that role. I do believe that, now this is without any empirical evidence because the companies don't share this, but based on my experience in the industry, I do believe that I was the largest legal private buyer of cannabis in the world.
No way.
Yeah.
How much cannabis were you moving?
Truckloads. We were bringing truckloads into our facilities. Oh, the company that I started it was Motif Labs. They were purchased by Organogram which is the company that I eventually moved over into. But Motif Labs didn't have their own cannabis growing capabilities, yet they were the number one and multiple brands in the vape space. So we would have to buy a bunch of cannabis, squeeze all the juice out of it, and then put it into our vapes. And we weren't only filling vapes for ourselves, we were also filling vapes for some of our partners as well. So just based on that and based on my understanding of the movement of it's really a commodity, right? So based on my understanding of the movement of the commodity, I do believe that we were the largest buyer.
And in terms of the last sort of 10 years, would you say it's more successful now than it was 10 years ago? Because obviously that the initial interest and the fact that it was unique, I don't know that there's ever any other countries that have made it like fully legal. Like I know in the States they've got kind of certain states are allowed it, but not. I know it's fully legal in California. Here in the UK, it's completely legal. But you can get it under like the doctor's note. You can sort of get like medical grade. Fun fact: years ago, Theresa May, who was a prime minister here, I think she either like had a slot in a company or she was the CEO of a company that was one of the largest producers of cannabis in like Europe or something like that. It's pretty crazy. And from what I understand, you don't hold me to this, but from what I understand, when she was in government, as many politicians do, she kind of made some investments that would benefit her business later on.
Yeah, it's expected these days, right?
It's iffy though. Like, do you know what I mean? It's like insider trading.
It 100% is. Yeah, it 100% is, especially if you're in a position where you can make the rules that benefit you. If there's no pushback from the institutions or from the public, then there's not much downside in making those moves.
I don't know. We live in a time where you can get like terrorized for stuff you did like 15 years ago. Like here in the UK, there's a radio host that just got done for some relationship he had like 10 plus years ago, which I've not delved into it, but it sounds dodgy. But it's crazy that like that can happen, and you have to think about that.
I hold a different view. I find it not crazy. I find it almost expected.
Okay, well, let's say you're 15 years old and you do something stupid on the internet, which is a daily occurrence. And 10 years from now, when you're in a job, important position, someone digs that up and goes, Quang, when you were 15, you said this. Therefore, you should lose your job, your livelihood, everything. We're going to cancel you to Timbuktu.
I don't agree with it. I'm saying I don't agree with it. But the expectation that people will use anything that they have to gain advantage, in this case, I don't know the specific situation, but I imagine that he had enemies or people that wanted him to fall. And for them to go and dig stuff up and use it as a method to attack him, I think is expected.
Yeah, oh, definitely, especially in politics and stuff like that. It's just what they do. But I don't like it because originally it began as a way of specifically cancel culture was a way of like targeting predators, which I was like, great, yeah, let's get them, let's just expose them, fantastic, right? But then it turned into this like witch hunt thing where it's like, well, let's just dig dirt on anyone that ever made a mistake ever. And it's like, I challenge you to find a human being that has not made a mistake at some point in their life. You know, no one's perfect. We're defined by choices.
We all have to sell the illusion that we're perfect.
We don't have to, but you're right. So I think social media really does push that. I don't buy into it. I buy into authenticity. You know, you be real with people and the real ones will find you. I have no interest in these people that create like influencers are to blame. You know, I mean, the influencers really let us down because, as the name suggests, they were supposed to influence people. And they do. But they don't influence people in a meaningful way. Like a Tony Robbins way, you know? Or Tim Robbins, I can't remember the guy's name. You know the guy that does all the public speaking? Yeah. Great guy.
Now, I would challenge you on that, Christian, right? So I would say that what influencers and what these people are doing is they're giving the audience what they want. So the reality is that the audience is the one that's feeding into this and fueling it. If the audience were more, let's say, informed, then they would not be consuming the content of the influencers and pushing them.
If you're in a position of influence and you're someone who can invoke change and people look up to you, it's absolutely your responsibility to set the benchmark, to set the standard, and to educate your audience. Consider the fact that like people in your audience... I think
morally you might be correct, but the reality is that's typically not how it works. The reality is that somebody will...
I'm not doing... You're right. That is exactly how it works. I just disagree with the morality and the decisions. Because if I had a big audience like that, I would be trying to kind of push people to do positive things with their lives. You know, like, hey, go out and do more charity work, or hey, better yourself, or, you know, believe in yourself, like positive things. Not, hey, buy into my crypto scam and give me all your money and...
great. I'm 100% with you. Like the guru grifter stuff, not really into it, but unfortunately it dominates the internet because it works.
I just hate that because that's just, you know, as you say, that's what people want. It reflects on society, and it's like, so like, you know, I had criticisms about like the show being long. I've had this in the past. Shout out to Vilma. She's one of my good friends and followers. Has said over the years, like, well, why don't you shorten the podcast, make it shorter, make it like more consumable to the average person? And I'm like, listen, if the average person can't stand to listen to something for like more than half an hour, whatever, that's their problem. I saw a video the other day. Oh my God. It was like a minute long. And the person that posted it was apologize and go, oh my God, I'm so sorry, this is such a long video, but I had to post it, blah blah blah. And I'm like, a minute is too long? What?
Yeah, that's a bit wild. I would say that your length is fine. If you look at the top 2 podcasts in the world, they're like what, Joe Rogan and Diary of the CEO or something like that, and they're both 2.5 to 3 hours long per episode. I think as long as you're able to keep the audience engaged for that long, it isn't really an issue.
Realistically as well, most people will consume your podcast through clips. That's just fact.
Okay.
I'd be a hypocrite if I sat here and said I didn't consume most of the podcasts that I like through clips more so than like sitting down and fully listening to it. And I've said on previous shows that a lot of the time when you deep dive on a podcast, you've got it in the background, you've got it elsewhere. You're not fully just sat down listening to it, right? Unless you're just a hardcore podcast fan. In which case, right on, man. But yeah, generally that's how it's consumed. but it's just disappointing to me, like the attention span being so small, and because it is something you have to work at. Like we can
It's
all
something
be
that I
affected by
question
it.
all the time, which is, given the internet, given how much information is out there, why is it that society does not move in a way that's more like, not necessarily truth seeking, but more truth knowing? And the conclusion I came to is that there's so much information, it's so hard to distinguish between what's actually true and what's actually just not necessarily false information, but not valuable information.
Well, it's true. Yeah, no. I mean, you'll find more truth on like Reddit than you will on the news channels, as crazy as it is. But at the same time, as you say, everything is, you got to look at it and be like, is this fake? Is this AI? Is this real? Is this, I don't know. I don't trust anything on the internet. And I'm a big believer in like dead internet theory. I think that like a lot of what we see now is just bots and just rage baiting and not real. And it's scary now that you're seeing, like, there's profiles that I see sometimes and I don't know if it's a real person or not. It's gotten to that point now where normally there's some telltale signs in videos and pictures. With pictures, it's easier, I feel. But we have gotten to that point now where you're questioning, second guessing, and that's obviously going to lead to eventually when scammers get a little bit more intelligent, they're going to use that. They're going to utilize that, and they're going to be very successful.
Yeah, they already are, right? I see posts of like phishing scams where they're using AI posts to try to get people to send them money now. It's the evolution of like the scams that came from some of the Eastern countries where they pretend to be whatever it is, a prince or whatnot, and I need money to do this in order to come see you. Yeah, it's an evolution of that, but now they're using AI and they're using like pictures of very attractive women to scam these people.
It's just terrifying, man. I mean, I knew it was a matter of time, but when I started seeing because I've been talking about AI since I started podcasting, years and years and years. I predicted a lot of this. My biggest sort of prediction, which hasn't come to fruition yet, but it's kind of starting to, is this idea of like AI generated content versus human generated content. I actually saw the term used the other day. And now bear in mind, I'm not saying I'm the first person that ever said human generated, right? But, years ago in like 2020, people weren't saying it.
It's becoming mainstream, right?
But yeah. Screw it, I coined it that. I saw it used in reference to this, and someone was going like, "Oh, what will people really care about in a few years? Human generated and AI generated?" And I'm like, "This is where we've got to, man. This is where it's come after all this time. We're getting into the debate sphere, and if you look at music, is probably the best example right now because you've got AI music being produced. You've got major artists using AI. For instance, Kanye West or Ye released a project recently and heavily used AI in that project, and there's a lot of pushback against it. It's like, well, is that right? Is it okay? I think a bit of experimentation is one thing, but when you're like using it to replicate your own voice or like you see it with YouTube videos as well. I'm sure you've come across this. Like how long have you been doing YouTube now, roughly?
My first video came out August of last year, but I really took it full time this year in January.
Cool. We'll deep dive into that in a second. But one thing I want to ask you is, have you seen these adverts for like avatar cloning? So it's like clone your voice, clone yourself, and basically get AI to do the content for you.
Yeah, and quite honestly, if I were able to get AI to produce videos at a quality of equal or greater than mine, I'd probably do it.
Oh, why? Okay, I'm going to heavily disagree with you.
Well, why? At the end of the day, it comes down to what does the market want, right? And if the market can't distinguish between AI and what's real, and they're consuming AI content, and it becomes faster and cheaper to produce AI content, it then becomes the optimal strategy to do that, right? If the market ends up wanting human content, then you should deliver human content. If the market wants AI content, then you should deliver AI content. That's kind of how I see it. Yeah.
Right now, AI is a fad. It's like people love it. People love an excuse to be lazy, and that's what this is. It enables people to be creative that didn't have a creative bone in their body. It enables people to basically just be lazy asses and sit there and just type into prompts and, it makes the money for me. I don't have to think. I can just sit here and vegetate and do nothing. But
I would challenge that a little bit because what's a good analogy here? I mean, maybe analogy is not the proper thing to use, but at the end of the day, there is going to be skill involved, right? People who are bad at making AI content are going to produce that slop. People will eventually become better at making AI content, and they'll be able to make like full motion films and whatnot that are of higher quality, that are engaging, and then it becomes a matter of what skills are required to make those type of content. Like from my point of view, it'll be something like storytelling. If someone who's more knowledgeable in things like composition will be able to make a better AI film than someone who isn't. And the great thing about AI is that it lowers that barrier to entry, where people who don't have access to, a team of animators and don't have access to a lot of the tools that were required to make movies in the past, they can, let's say, build the tools, build the skills of composition, the skills of storytelling and whatnot, and use AI to make a very compelling video or movie.
I think for me, I have to disagree as an artist, because for me, art comes from the soul. It's about explaining the human experience from the experience of a person, and AI basically just takes already existing content and remakes it. It doesn't come from a place of human experience. Like, you will never be able to see an AI band, an AI artist. You might be able to see like a hologram, in the future, an AI generated concept, but you won't see a real human being, a living, breathing person who actually wrote about those emotions that they're talking about in their song and put them out there. Same with the film.
What I think that you're doing is I think that you're taking the shortest path there, which is you type into an AI prompt, "Hey, make me a song," and it makes a song. But I'm thinking more so along the lines.
This is what most people are doing. I hear what you're saying, because it's one thing to use it as a tool, and like, I'm not completely discounting everything you're saying. Using it as in parts of elements to things, like I use AI with the podcast. So I'm not going to sit here and say it's not completely a usable tool, or it doesn't help you achieve certain goals. Like, taking my example with the podcast, I use it kind of as like a studio assistant. So essentially, like, it'll generate notes for me, it'll generate clips for me, and then I go through everything and check everything and see if I'm happy with it. And then I do my own editing. And that way, it's like having an assistant. I can't afford to pay an assistant, but I can afford to have an AI assistant. But the crucial thing, the point of contention, I guess, for me, and I think many artists, is using it as a tool versus using it as a creationary thing, a creation tool. As in, I type into a prompt and it makes the thing for me, and then I just post that, which is what a lot of people are doing. And that's what I have a problem with.
Yeah, and I think that's a phase. I might be incorrect here, but I do think that's a phase. I think it's going to become much more fine-tuned and more of a craft as time moves along. Consider this. This is a project that I intend on working on eventually, but I'm really bad at animating. I'm very bad at animating. I'm very bad at drawing, and I could spend a bunch of time to learn those skills to create like a short video, or I can use AI to create the video for me. But the video it hits my beats, it's at my pacing, it's the story that I want to tell, line for line. AI might help me write the script or something like that, but the main purpose of me using AI is to fill in the animation gap skill gap that I don't have.
Would it not be more rewarding to have built those skills on your own and know that everything came from you as opposed to a computer system?
No, I don't think so, because my goal is to get the product out, not to get better, not to get good at animation. My goal is to tell the story, not to learn how to draw.
I don't know. For me as an artist, this is like, you're ripping my heart out. I understand from a business perspective.
And it's not my business. It's just
I'm getting your mindset now, but I'm a bit like, we'll never agree on this.
Like I believe that the story I have to tell is very compelling. Like I at least in my head, it seems like a really interesting story that a lot of people will enjoy. But
again, for me, that's not what I have an issue with.
Yeah,
that part is the part I care about, because I'm like, oh, cool, a story that comes from your mind, fantastic. I want to hear that story. It's just the way in which that story is told. For example, if it's a story about your life, just for argument's sake, and we shoot it as a film with real actors, and you're on set and you're advising, etc. Right? Like, for instance, I saw what was it, like it was a really, really old like Bruce Lee biopic from like the 80s, I think. And it was like shot kind of like classic kung fu movies, like karate movies and stuff. I was amazed I'd never seen it, but the point is, like, it was very faithful to him. The guy looked a lot like him, a little bit too tall, but looked like him, and they did good casting and like everything. You could tell that they put a lot of time and effort into like making sure this was pretty faithful. Yeah, there were artistic, silly things in there and whatnot, things you'd expect. A lot of it felt more like a Jackie Chan film, really, than a sort of Bruce Lee project, but it was supposed to just be about his life, and apparently it's like 89-90% on, which is pretty cool. Anyway, telling a story like that, like a biopic, using AI, I just feel like AI should only ever be used as a tool to preserve certain things or to fix certain things. Like when the Beatles used it in that song to kind of fix certain elements that, like, they're never going to get John Lennon to come back. So that's the only way they can unearth that. But the difference is he created a thing and AI enhanced that thing and like fleshed it out. That's great. Yeah, that's perfect. Or when you need to like de-age someone, something like that. I think things like that as a tool, as an assistant tool, it can be a fascinating thing, a brilliant tool. But when it is literally just create this thing for me because I'd rather just have an image rather than pay an artist to do this, I always have an issue with that. You know, it lacks heart, it lacks soul, in my opinion.
Well, I think we're going to have to let the markets decide that, right? If the markets end up disagreeing with you and consuming a bunch of AI content, then that's definitely going to be the way that things move. But I don't think that AI is good enough to like turn a prompt into something that most people will desire. At least not yet. So I do think that currently a lot of it will have to be crafted by the person behind the prompts.
You said a point in passing that I think is important, and it's one I've sort of talked about in the past, which is, you know, a point where there'll be desire for human generated content. You strike me as a businessman. You came from a business background. I come from a business background too. We understand that everything is in cycles. Everything is life cycles. The AI life cycle will eventually get to a point where people will get bored. That's just what human beings are like. And there will be a clamoring for human content. Now, that'll be an interesting point because the two will be actively competing with each other. And then it'll be a case of like, how do you differentiate? How do you distinguish what makes human content better than AI and vice versa? Ease of use right now is the argument for AI, and the fact that you can just easily do things. Part of the beauty of creating and getting good at skills in life is this understanding that you have to go through a lot and it's going to be difficult and hard, but it's also going to be rewarding at the end. Like, for instance, when I started this podcast, I sucked at interviewing. I was terrible at trying to, you know, put a show together. I could just about do it, but it felt very, I don't know how to put it, kind of just like a guy trying to do an interview rather than just doing an interview. And then over time,
I feel you with YouTube, right? I'm like, what am I even doing here? Like, I have all this stuff. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just putting stuff out. But that's how everybody starts, right?
100%. But this is my point. You start not knowing, and you learn over time through progress and practice, and then you get good at it. You know, and that's just that's the beauty of it. You have to suck in order to get better. I think the problem with AI, where that's concerned, is you just start at the finish line, but you've not learned anything.
Now,
it's like when they say like, losing is better than winning because you learn something. You don't learn anything by winning. Same principle.
Yeah, and where I 100% agree with you, and that's where I think the advantage will lie with those who have that experience and use AI, not those that skip that experience and use AI. Which is kind of what we're seeing in the workforce, right? The advantage currently lies with people that went through the entry-level roles and grinded their way and fully understand, like, either whether it be scripting, coding, or business or whatever it is, they fully understand all the lower-level steps, and then they're able to use AI to get the most out of it. People that jump directly into the end step and use AI to try to produce products, based on my observations, those products are inferior to those that fully understand the process.
I think that'll always be true as well. Simply because you can just get so much more out of something if you fully understand it, if you understand all of its components, 100%. But the average human is lazy, man. The average human is not going to want to put the work in, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Like when I look at things...
And I think that's fine, right? Because if they don't put the work in, and people that do put the work in are able to find better success, which is what we hope. We hope that those that are better at the craft are able to find better success, then I don't see an issue with that.
I think the issue stands more with the type of people that are going to be, I was going to say created, but if you look at where society is at right now, Gen Z, Gen Alpha, people's attention spans, then you look at AI and how lazy people are getting, how businesses are using it, etc. We're getting to a point where people are not willing to put the time into learning things. They just simply want to get the end result straight away. Obviously, we made the point about like how you jump to the finish line and everything, but the bigger problem is you lack life experience. You lack experience in general. Like when I talk to people about certain things on this show, I come from a point of understanding because I've done a lot in my life so far and I've really thrown myself out there. And I think that makes it easier to interview people. So for instance, I can tell that you're a business-minded person. I can relate to that. I came from a business background myself. I understand that world and how that world exists and it looks one way, and then the creative world works another way. And I can see that you're applying what you've learned in business to content. And you'll likely be very successful doing that because that's like one route for YouTube is like looking at analytics, looking at how to do things from a business perspective. It's not always foolproof, it's unpredictable, as we know with the internet, like you can just throw random stuff and it'll do well. And you can put stuff out there that seemingly should do well and then flops. So it's always unpredictable in that sense. But the point is, we've both studied in our craft in different areas and we understand these things and with their points of reference. Now, when you have zero experience at all and nothing to pull from, you're just a consumer, you're not a producer. What do you really have to contribute? What do you have to bring to the table? That's what I worry about is a society of people that are like that are just, they don't learn, they don't grow, they don't study, they don't research, they're just drones.
Well, if we don't reward that behavior, right? We don't reward behavior that involves not learning, not doing anything, then those people shouldn't find success. So they should go to a different path that would hopefully get them some kind of success. At least that's kind of how I view it.
They shouldn't get success, but they will get success.
A small number of them will. A small number of them will hit some kind of algorithmic jackpot and find success that way, like the Hoktua girl, but that's not going to be the norm. And it's almost like chasing a lottery ticket, right? Like you're just going to throw stuff out there and hope that you win the lottery. It doesn't really work that way. And people will, the hope is that people will discover that and then find a different way to get some value.
Let's hope.
Yeah.
I want to bring it back to you because already we've had a fun little chat for about half an hour and I'm getting excited now. With this remote job, I just want to kind of look at remote working as a concept for a second to kind of build. But we'll get there. How does remote work compare with an in-person job?
Man. So when I was in person, I wanted to be remote. But then once I was remote and moved up the ladder, I understood that in person is probably more valuable in many ways. So a lot of the growth that I had in terms of, being around people, being able to talk to people and getting ideas from people that were further along in life than me came from being in person, like sitting next to my bosses, sitting next to other coworkers and absorbing what they had to say immediately was definitely beneficial. And I feel that with a lot of the remote workers today, they don't get that. So they're existing in their own bubble at home, doing what it is that they need to do, but they're not growing as much as an individual because they're not exposed to everything else. Now, mind you, I think that commuting is awful and ideally you'd be able to teleport in and not have to waste your time commuting. But there is a lot of value in being in person that I think is lost right now because of the remote culture.
I think that'll always be the case as well. it's when you're around it, when you're in the thick of it, you always absorb things. Excuse me. It's like the classic thing you'd see in like sitcoms where, you know, people that are in the smokers area talking to the bosses always get the opportunities that others don't. Excuse me. Or if you're on the golf course sucking up to the bosses, which I don't agree with sucking up. I never did that. But more often than not, if you're around said people, it's because you're around that you get those opportunities. It's not even necessarily that you deserve the opportunities, but you're there. You're the first port of call. You're the person they think of, versus, as you rightly put it, when someone's at home in their own bubble, does anyone really think about them? Probably not.
It also builds trust, right? When you're sitting there talking to them, it builds much more trust than just responding to messages on Teams and whatnot.
And I've always been a big supporter of remote work, but I do think in the context of a company, it does kind of stand against you. But it depends on what your goal is. Like for me, my goal is to work from home and hopefully within the fields of like creative endeavors. So for me, it would be ideal, and I don't care much for like career progression in a company because I've seen what that looks like, and you really got to commit yourself fully to it. And there's a lot of negatives that come with that. There's positives, but it's mostly you got to have a thick skin. I think you got to be willing to play politics. You know, all these different concepts that shouldn't have any place within a business world, because business should just be about making money and you know, doing it effectively. But because we're human beings, inevitably these things are gonna come into play. And like I remember hearing years ago that most business decisions are made like from a place of emotion or something, and it's true. It is true.
Like, let's say that you are able to work completely in the creative space. Eventually, when you hire somebody, would you not want them to be there with you so that you can bounce ideas back and forth with them, or would you prefer for both of you to be working remotely? Because I've thought about this myself, and if I were, or when I do eventually hire people, I would like to have some face-to-face time with them. And when I look at other YouTubers like Marcus Brownlee and Dami, who is an architecture YouTuber, they all have in-person teams because of that.
I think realistically, it really comes down to what you require from people. I mean, there's different ways you can do it. Like, I think hybrid is a good model. I think giving people the option is a good model, but it depends on what their job is. Some jobs need to be done physically. I think collaboration, working on projects, you can do it where it's like a couple of days together and then the rest is apart. I think that's good. And it also builds excitement for working together. Because that's one of the issues with like working in an office or whatever is it gets very like frustrating. Sometimes it's good to be away from that and then come back with a fresh head and stuff like that. Whereas when you're trapped in it, you're in it. There's no way of getting out of it. But I think there's a lot to be said for what you're saying. I think that it does depend on what you're looking for and the type of work that you want to do with people. Some things can only be done in person. I don't like the way that remote work is being positioned now as a bad thing. Like, you know, people are getting lazy. Like, you have to remember like what it's given people. For some people, it's given them more time with their families. It's given people, you know, just options that were never available before, rather than having everything dictated to them.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. I think that, like I said, the biggest thing is commuting for a lot of people. Commuting is just a waste of time. And I think when you look at some of the happiness studies regarding working, the further your commute is, the less happy you are. It doesn't matter how much money you make. If you're just spending 2 hours a day in traffic, you're probably not going to be a happy person.
So I remember seeing, I can't remember if this was in the States. It's usually in the States and they have these debates, but they were talking about like how the commute should be figured into the pay. And I was like, oh, that's an interesting concept. And they're like, well, technically, it's hours that you've dedicated to trying to get to work and away from work. And it should be figured in because it's like part of that journey. And there's different arguments you can make this. You could be like, well, you could choose to be closer to work. That's one argument. I think that's fairly valid. There's the argument of hours. You know, I know that like when I did marketing, I didn't need to be in the office like 9 to 5 or 8 to 5. Realistically, I got most of my work done in the first couple of hours, and then I was just sat twiddling my thumbs the rest of the day. And this is after having looked for other work to do as well, like other projects. I ended up like working and just giving myself work because there was just nothing to do. So there's that element, but I don't know, man. I think really, I don't like how it's being reflected as a bad thing, and how people are being made out to be lazy and all this. And I also don't like how it's used as a bargaining chip. That's not good. Like they're like, oh,
I had this expected.
Yeah, I see it in the UK. Like there's one job I saw where it was like, oh, you commute as part of your probation for 6 months, even though everyone else gets to work hybrid or remote. And then after that, we can have a conversation about whether or not you get to do it. And it's like, I'm not being funny, but just let people do it. Like, what's the issue?
It's the issue of trust, right? So the first 6 months is to build that trust, to make sure that this isn't from somebody that's just going to be sitting at home stealing hours.
But that's the thing as well. Like, it's the output versus the daily expectation, I suppose. Right? Everyone knows that no one sits at a desk for like 8 hours of the day and works 8 hours of the day. You work probably like 5 or 6 hours, and the rest of the time is spent having chats, coffee breaks, water breaks. You need to get, I mean, it's important as well. Like, no jokes. Like, you need to be able to get up and just kind of get the brain working again, or to take a break from the screen and come back to it, etc. That's an important element to it, but also you just can't zone in that much, like even when I'm like fully fixated on a project and I'm invested, my body won't allow me to sit there for 8 hours doing it. You have to get up and move around, touch grass,
Yeah, 100%. But the main thing is, if you hire somebody and you immediately put them on remote, what people have experienced is that they either do subpar work, or they're working for like 2 or 3 companies at once, and they're not disclosing that. So there is that risk involved with new hires. And I'm not saying that it's proper to have them in for 6 months, but I can understand the justification for ensuring that they're not cheating you in a way that you may not appreciate.
Something like that can be written into a contract. So I think that's on the companies, really. I also think what you do in your spare time is your business, from a business perspective, unless the work that you do outside of job A clashes with the work that you do in some way. Like, I don't know, let's say I'm working for a manufacturing company, and then I'm also working for a supplier or a rival manufacturing company, then that would be inappropriate. But if it's just something completely unrelated, then who cares? Like if I take a job now and I do like marketing or customer service or something, I'm not going to stop doing my podcast, my acting, my music. I'm not going to stop doing that, And if someone would say stop doing it, I'd be like, no, I quit.
I'm more so thinking of like multiple 9 to 5s where you're expected to be present at that time for multiple companies. That's the kind of, let's call it, dishonesty that I'm thinking about.
No, that's crazy.
Yeah,
that's
it's
crazy.
It's a big thing.
I mean, because what you're essentially doing there is, you are. Yeah, I'd agree that is cheating. Unless it's like you've got jobs that are kind of on-call jobs, you know what I'm saying? Like where you don't have to kind of work every second of the day, you're kind of more on call. But again, though, I don't know that you can really juggle it effectively and give, because you're being paid for your time in a job. That's what you're being paid for, your time and your attention. So if you're working several jobs at the same time, then they're not getting your time, are they?
Yeah, based on what I've seen, most of it is with software engineers where they're doing coding for multiple companies.
I suppose you could get away with just like for the company you care about, you actually code, and the company you don't care about, you just put an AI prompt in and go like, oh, there you go. So that's how you get around that. Anyway,
Sorry, Christian, I'm not sure if you're seeing it as well, but it's cutting in and out for me.
Yeah, don't you worry about that, man. Riverside fixes that beautifully. Again, another impromptu advert for Riverside, even though I don't get sponsored by them or anything. All of it. See, the good thing about it as well is it's direct in. So it takes my stuff and your stuff, and it throws it in there, and then when it does the final cut, it will mix those things together and cut out any, error messages, anything where there's it might cut out dialogue here and there, but it will do it in a natural way, because I was worried about that. What if it just completely deletes things? But it doesn't. It does it naturally and it blends it well. I think the only time there would be an issue is if there's a real big internet issue at one person's end and you're losing loads of dialogue. Then I had it recently. I had to reschedule with someone, and it was so much better once he had good internet. But the time before, I was like, yeah, there's no way, because I've got to be able to do the interview as well, and I can't if there's big error messages. But anywho, what did you learn from remote working?
What did I learn? I learned that it was very hard for me to stay focused when there are so many distractions at home around me.
You didn't have a self-contained space, like a separate office room or something like that?
No, I didn't. I don't have that luxury. So I worked right next to my personal computer, and yeah, switching content switching back and forth was something that I had to cut. Otherwise, I wasn't getting anything done. But overall, remote working was a great experience. I think that eventually, my opinion is that when you start off in the workforce, you probably want to be there in person. You want to absorb as much as possible. And once you get to a point where you're comfortable enough understanding what it's like to behave in a corporation, wherever it is that you're working, at a certain point, you can then be sent home and you can then operate independently. But if you're new to the workforce and you don't really know what it means to work independently, then you should probably go into the office, because you'll benefit a lot from it.
No, I completely agree with that. From the perspective of understanding how to manage your time, because one of the difficulties with working from home is, staying not distracted, but also structuring your day in much the same way when you sit down at your desk. I mean, I always do the same thing. Sit down. I've come early. I grab my coffee. I ease in. I check my emails, and then I start cracking into the first thing. And within an hour or two, now I'm getting some work done. But it takes time. When I worked from home, I'd do crazy stuff like rock out of bed half an hour before and just slink into my chair and then initially I was like, yeah, this is great, I get away with this. And after a while you realize, no, I got to treat this seriously and get up and shower and do exactly what I did before. You can enjoy, a bit more time in bed, but you still need to kind of approach it seriously. But it's fascinating you bring that up though, because if you've never experienced that and your first job is a remote job, which for many people it may be, you don't know about any of these things. You don't know about workplace etiquette or the structuring of things and how to do things, and
how to talk to people, how to request things from people, right? It's unfortunate, but a lot of it is political speak. You have to approach it with a certain way to get them to do things for you.
I learned that years ago with IT people. It's there's one place I worked where they had a sign on their door and it said, if it's not in Jira, it doesn't exist. As you have to set up a task for it.
Yeah, and you learn things too. The reason why people bring in snacks is to build goodwill with people, and you learn things
up, man. Come on.
It works. It builds goodwill, and then when people think about it, you're like, oh, that's the person that brings in the snacks and gives everybody a good time. And I don't like this. I don't like this at all. I'll be honest with you. I absolutely hate office politics, but it's such an interesting game.
See, you see guy with snacks. I see kiss ass. I see untrustworthy. That's what I see. Because people that do shit like that, you can't trust people like that.
Yeah, but it's I call it building favors. Snacks is one way. It's the obvious way, but there are other ways to build favors with people.
Dude, I'll give you an example in series that perfectly demonstrates this. Have you ever heard of a series called Dexter?
Yes.
Right. So for those who don't know, Dexter is about a serial killer who works for a police department as their blood splatter analyst, right? And there begins a crossover point where he's killing people and then they're investigating the murders that he's committed. So he's playing like both sides, right? And his way to curry favor and to make people in the office like him and trust him is to bring in donuts. And everyone's like, oh, you're so great, Dexter. You're so lovely. And like they all buy into his bullshit, except for this one guy. Dokes. Officer Dokes. Because Dokes sees right through the bullshit and goes, no, you're a creep motherfucker. There's something wrong with you. I'm going to find it out. And he was right in the end. So I won't spoil it for people. Go watch it. But him bringing in the donuts is just so fake and such a great visual representation of that, because he was hiding being a serial killer. So the guy that brings in the snacks, he could be a serial killer. There you go.
Yeah, I wouldn't recommend bringing in donuts or something like that, because that game is known now. For me, I curry favor by just helping people out. I see a problem, I go in there, I try to help them out, and I never say, "Hey, you owe me." But when I ask them to help me out in the future, it typically comes a lot easier.
There's another example I'm reminded of while we're talking about it, actually. You ever seen a show called How I Met Your Mother?
Yeah.
Okay, it's a personal favorite of mine. I love it. Do you remember the episodes where they're working in corporate, and I believe Marshall, who, to give people some context, Marshall is a guy who wants to work in like in the environmental world and save the planet, but in the run up to that, he's not able to do that. So he's trying to become a lawyer to do that, but in the process of that, he has to work these horrible, soul destroying corporate jobs. And he has to take on one lawyer job where he's a lawyer for a company that is like very immoral, and he's like having a problem with that. And his friend Barney, who's a bit of a trickster and a bit of a crazy guy, a living caricature essentially, is getting him into all sorts of like problems, right? And there's one episode in particular where he's like, you got to have a thing. And he's like, what do you mean? And he's like, well, there's guy that brings in the snacks, there's the guy that does the fantasy league, there's the guy that comes in costumes. You got to have a thing. And so he's like scratching his head like, what's my thing going to be? What's my thing going to be? I don't know if it was the fantasy league thing or something else, but he comes up with something and then he becomes the guy that has that thing. But you see that in workplaces a lot, where it's like everyone's trying to kind of distinguish a way of making themselves invaluable, even though in every company you're about as valuable as the pavement. Just being honest, I've seen people fired after years and years and years and years of service. Makes no difference. There is no loyalty. There is no one is safe.
It's transactional, right?
It's just the wild, man. You know, I always look at it like this. The first thing I ever got taught in my very first paid like contract job, and it was like just working for a supermarket. This guy who ended up, he was like an assistant manager, but he ended up like screwing over his friends in the end. He said, always watch your back. And I was like, well, what do you mean? And he's like, make sure that everything that you do in work is above board, and like everything that you do is right, essentially, so that people can't kind of be like, oh, but you did this wrong. You did this wrong. You did this. Obviously, if people dig deep enough, they'll eventually fire you anyway, because if you really want to get rid of someone, you'll find a way, right? But in general, that protects you. It's the people that cut corners and purposefully do things wrong and talk about it, which is even crazier. People at work are not your friends. People like get too trustworthy, or they become the guy that brings in the snacks, and then it's like that won't save you. You know, it's a good idea, it's a good mask, but it won't save you.
Yeah, I can talk about that endlessly, right? So in being in procurement, everything that comes in, you're the first point of contact. But imagine where somebody needs something, but they don't tell you. They will then blame you blame me for not bringing it in when I didn't know that they needed it. So covering my ass was something that became extremely proficient at.
It's frustrating as well because like sometimes, like I was talking to my housemate about this. He's having a bit of a situation at work, and it's been. I don't want to give specifics, but what I'll say is he's working with this guy and has been working with this guy for like close to 2 years now, and they're in a small close knit team, and so they've got like a boss, and then but they like kind of self manage. But technically, the other guy that he works with is senior to him, right? Technically. He could have had that job if he wanted it, but he just decided he didn't. Now he's kind of regretting that decision. But mostly because this other guy in his team does nothing. Like, nothing. Like, there's the amount of times I just sit there listening to my friend talk about it, and I'm like, how is this guy not fired? And it's like, well, the way the company is, it's like, it's really hard to fire people. You know, you got to kind of build up a bunch of evidence and then eventually fire them. I'm like, this is ridiculous. If someone's, for example, not showing up to work or showing up when they feel like it or are just not there, surely you can just fire them for that. Like, where are you? What do you mean you're not here? You're fired. What? You know? But this is the thing with contracts and maybe it's different in Canada, but here in the UK, it's very like very, very difficult to fire people without just cause. And even with just cause, it's got to be like concrete, like they have to, I don't know, be like stealing or something like that. But basically, with my friend, like, it got to a situation like the other day. I'll give you an example, right? So he's been feeling unwell, so he was like, okay. I'm going to text this guy who is my senior, like he's trying to do things like procedure to cover his ass, but also like do things properly, right? Because this other guy doesn't do anything. So he's like, all right, I'm going to text him the night before and let him know that I won't be there the next day. So that this other guy, who has also got similar responsibilities, can then take over and essentially take his place, right? He texts him, he doesn't receive a response. It's like, all right then. So then my friend texts his big boss, right? His former like main boss, but like his the boss, right? He texts him and goes, hey, I won't be there this morning. Just letting you know, I texted this guy the previous day, he didn't get back to me, right? So then comes the day off, my friend's at home, he's ill, right? And he's let his boss know, but his boss isn't happy. It's a place where everyone's got to be let in, and it's like a public building, so everyone's got to be let in, and there's like key holders and stuff like that, right? So there was no one there to open up. So this big boss has got it in the ear from like all these other departments that are having to open up, and they're like, oh, what's going on in your team? What's the problem? So he's annoyed about that because his team's basically let him down. Right? Now, the guy who is immediately responsible, my friend, he's at home ill. He's already excused himself because he's texted not one, but two people, and he's done it chain of command style, right? But the problem is this other guy that he works with has not bothered to tell the big boss about him not being in, if that makes sense. And also, because my first question, I had a lot of questions when he laid this situation out. I was like, okay, but where was he? Because you're not here. And the big boss doesn't get there till later. So where's this other guy who says he's always in early? Where is he? Why is he not there to open up? And he's like, I don't know. No one can find him. And I'm like, how did it? And this is the thing in workplaces. People like this seem to just get away with everything, even though they break all the rules and they are useless. They're the ones who get promoted. Make it make sense. How?
It's something that I think about a lot, which is that perceptions are more powerful than reality. And somehow this guy has created the perception that he deserved it, right?
I don't know. I don't know how he's managed to get away with all the things he's got with for close to 2 years. Because I could tell stories for days about this, about him just putting off projects, things like, oh, this should have been done 18 months ago. Oh, yeah. That's the end of the conversation. And my friend's just looking at it like, I mean, if it were me, I could have got that done a year and a half ago. What's going on? Because that's the thing. It's one thing when someone is like cutting corners and stuff, but when someone's just like not doing things and it falls on your shoulders, That's unfair when you end up doing the work of other people as well.
What is
But
it?
for some-
Pareto's principle: 20% of the people do 80% of the work, or something like that. Yeah.
Moving on. Before I ask you about the big question, I wanted to kind of understand what are you doing right now? Are you earning from YouTube yet? Are we there yet? Or
No, not at all. I'm mostly just doing YouTube, trying to see what I can do to improve, make better videos, make more compelling videos, and yeah, the goal is to one day be self-sufficient off it.
so I don't want to pry too much into like personal stuff, but like,
Feel free.
I
have nothing to hide, really.
have you kind of like taken an investment of time and you're not working and you're just focusing fully on this, or do you have something on? Okay, all right, cool. So now I've set up the tone. I've laid out the playing field here. The question is, and I wanted to save this till now, why did you quit your $100,000 a year remote job to pursue philosophy?
Well, I thought about it a lot. And
I should hope so. Just that I did a win.
there isn't one answer in particular, but I'll go through some of the ones that really stand out. Right. So the first one is like, what is my goal in life? Like, what are my objectives in life? And how do I want to live my life? So the main thing I want to do is like maximize happiness and minimize unhappiness and minimize regret. And you know the saying, like, money buys happiness, money doesn't buy happiness. Well, that's complete bullshit. Money does buy happiness, but there's diminishing returns on it, right? So when you buy your first car, like, you're fairly happy, you now have something to drive around in. But when you buy your second car, it just doesn't hit the same. And I kind of experienced that with a lot of what I was spending my money on. Like, when I bought my first graphics card for gaming many years ago, it was like a mid-tier graphics card. I was extremely happy to be able to do so. But when I bought my 5090, it's like, okay, now I have a better graphics card. And same thing with like traveling. So I've been to Japan 4 times now. The first time was great. The second time was good. The third time was good as well. And the last time was just kind of like, yeah, Japan's cool.
This is just a place I go to now.
Yeah, and when you learn about like how humans adapt to things and how things just kind of become baseline, it all makes sense, right? So I found that in terms of happiness, the amount of money I was making was no longer buying me a sufficient amount of happiness to me for it to be worth it. Like, I could chase more expensive things. I could chase more like extravagant experiences, but I don't really care about that. Like, do I really need to buy a Lamborghini? No, not at all. I'm pretty happy with my electric car, just like getting me around the city. So the work introduces unhappiness, right? And I just found that the calculus didn't make sense anymore. The amount of unhappiness I was getting from having to commit my life to working for somebody else versus the amount of happiness that the money from it was buying me, the calculus didn't make sense anymore. So that's one really big one. And then another one was, so I sat down and I thought about like, what if I could do anything in the world without any kind of restraint, what would it be? And the answer I came to was, I seek the truth. And then I was like, okay, that's not what I expected,
Profound.
but I guess I'm becoming a philosopher. But there's, like I said, there's many reasons. Another one that we spoke about was AI. So AI has allowed me to do things like write better scripts and work faster in terms of content creation. Like when I record stuff now and there's noises, having AI to be able to just remove any kind of background noise, that's amazing. Or if I ever need to do a mask and I don't have to rotoscope it myself, having AI kind of do that for me, like, that's a really great technology that we're able to leverage to do things that I just wasn't able to do before. So having it nowadays, like, I would write my script and then I would have it go find references and put the references in next to the line, so I can do like the research live while I'm script writing. And it's stuff like that that made it more comfortable for me to really make this jump. And let's talk about like AI in the workforce, right? So before I left, I was thinking about how I could replace my workers with AI, because it was already at the point where it could do that. And I thought, like, 7 years down the road, what's stopping a better version of AI from replacing me? So hedging for that as well, I was like, okay, I think if I were to hop over to content creation, I should be able to make like some money 7 years down the road. Maybe it may never get to the point where it was beforehand, but I was already at the point in life where money wasn't really buying me any more happiness. So the calculus was just kind of saying like, yeah, go explore entrepreneurship, go explore philosophy, and see what you can do on that path, rather than staying in a corporate job that doesn't really get you any more happiness.
Would you say that in your time spent away from the corporate world, it's affected your philosophy in some way, like the way that you look at life?
In the time I spent away from it, that's
because it's what I'm saying with this is it's a bubble. You're working in that field, in that industry, right? You're in it, and then you come out of it, and like when I moved away from corporate, I discovered a lot of things. Like there was a lot of different ways to make money. There's a lot of different styles. There isn't just A, B, and C. There's also F, Z, whatever, right? But also, I realized that that's only one way of thinking, and their way of thinking never really changes. But given that you're pursuing philosophy, which is all about thinking and pondering the great questions from the like really, really deep ones to the everyday concerns. And I just guess because you're not in that sphere anymore, I wondered if that had like a profound impact on the way that you think and feel.
I would say that the way I think and feel has changed, but I don't know if it has to do specifically with leaving the field. And one of the reasons why I say this is that even when I was working in corporate, I spent most of my time like learning about things, learning about psychology, philosophy, physics, like anything, economics. A big one recently is like history. So I try to keep myself educated in many different fields just to get I like it. I think that it's actually quite enjoyable. And business is one of them, right? Where I would spend a lot of time online reading about business case studies and whatnot. And having worked in over 20 different positions myself, I've already seen different ways of how one can run a business. And not only that, I've failed at creating multiple businesses because I didn't know what to do, but I gave it a shot. So I wouldn't say that it opened my world in that sense because I was already exposed to a lot of it, but having more time to think definitely allowed me to come up with some more interesting concepts that I may not have had the time to back when I was working in corporate.
Moving it forward to philosophy in general, what have you learned in your journey pursuing philosophy so far?
Oh, the big one is whether or not anything that I come up with is real or delusion. Like one big thing that I am one of the big things that drove me in this direction is the fascination with delusion. And how do I really approach this? So are you familiar with like geocentrism and heliocentrism?
I'll say that I am, no.
So in the past, we used to believe in geocentrism, which is that the Earth was the center of the universe. But we found out that that's not true. The Earth revolves around the sun. So for hundreds of years, we were living under the delusion that the Earth was the center of the universe, right? And this is like a mass delusion that everybody believed. So it just got me fascinating. What other mass delusions are there? What other delusions are we living that are just objectively false, but we believe is true and we're living by it? Like the Salem witch trials would be another one, right? Where we believe that these women were witches and we burnt them at the stake. And so when I come up with a lot of, let's say, my frameworks and my understandings as to how the world works, is it actually true? And that's something I struggle with quite often because I only have my own mind to work with here. And yes, I can question others, but who's to say that what they believe is true or false? So it's I wouldn't quite say it's like a dilemma, but it's something that I ponder about a lot, which is that like, what is actually true? I remember earlier in this conversation that you said that Reddit was the source of truth. These days, when I go on Reddit, I find that everything on there is completely false.
Oh, to be clear, I didn't say it was the source of truth.
a source of truth.
I said if you compare it to like what you see on the news, I would trust Reddit over the news. I believe that. However, you're right. What you have to remember is it's like when people claim Wikipedia as a source. I mean, it's written by people without credentials. And if it's a factual thing, I always try to look for the source, where the source is, important factors like that. When you're looking at news these days, I mean, there's trackers now that tell you like which is slanted which way, who's funded by who, all this. And I'm like, so you just can't trust the media at all. Like, because news should be just pure fact. Like, okay, there was a bombing in this country today at this time. That should be it. It shouldn't be like sensationalist. But of course, that's what media has turned into. That's what news has turned into. So it's very hard to, and now obviously with the advent of AI and just the fact that people put false narratives, false information out there as propaganda to dissuade, to deceive, to split people up for political agendas. I mean, it's hard to find anything factual.
Yeah, and that's kind of where I was leading into this, which is like, what exactly is true? Now, something that I think, so why philosophy, and why do I think that I have some kind of aptitude for this? It's very interesting. I struggle to say this because I don't necessarily believe it myself. This is what I'm talking about when I'm talking about whether or not what I come up with are delusions. But it seems like I have the ability to see like shapes and patterns through space and time in my head. It feels like a superpower in ways. Like, I know it sounds like, I see your face, and that's kind of how I see it too when I'm like trying to explain this to people. But I'm not the only one to have to claim to see things like this. You're familiar with Ray Dalio? So Ray Dalio, he created Bridgehead or Bridgewater, Bridge something, pretty much one of the most successful investment firms in the world. And he claims that he's able to like see and feel like the machinery of the stock markets. And I feel like I'm able to see like the shapes and patterns of things more in a different way than what other people would, how other people could perceive it. And this is like, it's so hard to claim this because I don't know what it's like in the minds of other people, right? But an example would be the way how I see like my relationship with my wife, and the way how I believe that most relationships end up being. They're like ascending sine waves through time, right? So the relationship will get better and better, and it'll hit a peak, and then it'll start getting worse and worse. And during that time where it gets worse and worse, there's typically some kind of challenge that needs to be overcome. So a simple one would be, she's not happy that I don't wash the dishes. So if I can overcome that challenge, then the relationship can get better and better again. But eventually, I'll hit another peak, and it'll start getting worse and worse again. But if I can't overcome that challenge, or not me, it's because it's a partnership. If we can't overcome the challenge, then eventually the relationship will peter off and die. And it's just, you see that like ascending sine wave pattern in many different aspects of life, not just relationships.
I think with relationships though, like a lot of the time it's, as you say, it starts with something small and it escalates. So like if a couple breaks up, it's not going to be because, oh, he doesn't wash the dishes. It'll be because you don't wash the dishes, which leads to arguments because, oh, do you not care? Do you not care about like taking care of this place? What else don't you care about? You know, do you not take me seriously? It becomes a matter of respect. It's a question of respect.
It could be anything, right?
Or not? But like, it's what I'm saying is that's the small straw that breaks the camel's back. You know, it's never just, you didn't wash the dishes, I'm packing my bags and leaving tomorrow. Like it builds. And what a lot of, quite frankly, what I think a lot of guys that end up like in relationships where their wife, girlfriend, whatever leaves them, because it's more often than not, like we miss out on certain signs that we're not paying attention to, you know, or we're just not cognizant, we're not respectful enough. You know, like, I don't have this issue with it could be a sign of something like,
because you're not washing the dishes, like what else are you letting slip in your life, kind of things, right? Like this is kind of
it's just again, it's a respect. Like if you're living in a house with someone, you have to be mindful of each other. You have to respect each other's space. And of course, if you're in a relationship, everything that you do is rooted in love and respect. So things like that, like let's say your wife works longer than you, right? And she comes home and all the dishes are not met. You know, they're dirty. You've just left, right? It's kind of a reflection on, well, you would know that she's working late. So you're the one who finishes early. You've had time to like come home, rest, maybe have a shower, whatever, like time to like, whereas when she comes home, she needs time to unwind, but now there's immediately stuff that has to be done. And maybe she needs to eat, but like there's no clean dishes because they're all in the, you know, you see what I mean? It's like, but if you'd have fixed that problem for her, she wouldn't then have to deal with that. And
Yeah, and
by
for
you
me, that would be
fixing
like
it,
the downwards trend, right? So
right. It's like that continuously.
hmm so then you have to overcome that, whatever it is. It could be the dishes and everything else that she has an issue with, or you might have an issue with. And if you as a couple can overcome that, then you start going back on that upward trajectory. But then, like anything else, you end up coming into another challenge. Maybe it's something like her dad died and you weren't supportive enough. And can you overcome that? And the point I'm trying to make is that that pattern does seem to occur in like almost all relationships, if not all, and in multiple things, not just relationships. And that's what I mean by like by how I can. It seems like I'm able to see things in a different way from people and make and find these patterns in what we call reality.
I can relate. I get it with more of emotion. I can feel like when someone's lying to me, but like intensely. I can feel when someone's like evil or a bad person or any negative energy in a room. Now, obviously, a lot of this comes down to what you believe, but like I feel it so intensely that I can't ignore it. You know, like I know when
And
there's
it's
a
hard
storm
to
coming.
tell other people what it's like. Yeah.
Well, yeah, because they probably just think you're crazy, to be honest. And look, I take everything with a pinch of salt myself. Do you know what I mean? But I do think that human beings are capable of a lot more than we realize, and that I think every human being it's like the Matrix, right? Don't come at me, right? Because I know that a lot of people, when they hear that, it's like, oh, red flag. Oh no, he's going to talk about like fucking red pill bullshit. No, what I'm talking about is, you know, the concept in the Matrix where they're plugged in or they're not plugged in. And again, this is just my experience, but you know, I've seen people talk about this as well. It feels to me like most people are like NPCs, non-playable characters in a video game, but like they lack consciousness. Like sometimes I'll be walking down the street and people will just stop. They won't do anything. They're mindless of their surroundings. It's like they have no consciousness. And I remember reading years ago about this concept that apparently not everyone has an inner dialogue. Well, what do you mean? I'm not necessarily saying like you have a voice in your head, but like everyone has thoughts, right? Wrong. You don't know that. We assume that to be the case. But what if there's only like a handful of human, like what if it goes in like tiers? Because like, look, I'm not sitting here saying like I'm some super intelligent being, right? I know I'm not. But I know that I'm not one of these like NPCs that doesn't think and feel and have some kind of consciousness. Because I question everything in life constantly, maybe too much. I used to get criticized at school for that, but I was like, I remember the teachers would say like, oh, Christian, you ask too many questions. And I'm like, is that not the point? You're saying don't ask questions. You're saying basically don't use critical thinking. I'm saying you have to use that in life for everything. If you just accept everything on face value, you're screwed over. And also you're missing so much of what is real in life. You're missing opportunities to learn, opportunities to grow. It's like when people tell you like not to do things. A lot of time people take that as a personal challenge, right? But many people just fall in line and accept. I like to sometimes like to test the boundaries and say like, can I go through that door? Maybe it is too much like a video game. I don't know. But the funny thing is like you push the buttons and you push the boundaries a bit. Much like a video game, life will push you in interesting directions that the average person doesn't see.
Yeah. So very interesting that you bring that up. So I didn't actually watch The Matrix till like a couple months ago.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. I've known about it like almost my entire life. I didn't actually watch it till a couple months ago, and it like resonated with me in like such a profound way, right? So I agree with you in that most people probably are in the Matrix. And what I mean by that is if you just accept what society has to give you without really questioning it, that is effectively the same as being in the Matrix. Because like I think about what my life was like before, let's say before philosophy, right? I believed that I needed to grow up, go to school, get a job, get married, have kids, and do all that stuff. But why? Why do I need to do any of that? It's because that's the expectations that society places upon you. And it's like a lot of the beliefs that people have are probably not their own beliefs. They're beliefs that other people put into them. And for me, that's what the Matrix is. It's kind of just accepting the world that is given to you without questioning it. And when you start questioning it, that's when you're able to take a step back and realize that, hey, like, no, life doesn't have to be the way that other people prescribe it to me. Like a big one is American consumerism, right? So in America, it's all about spending money. It's all about buying the next big thing. And you learn that it's contrived. I forget the name of the individual, but it was somebody back up. I want to say in the 1800s, I said we need to create a society of consumers so that we can like profit and benefit from them. So yeah, like there is a real concept here that people probably are living in a world that they believe to be true when it isn't. And I can say that because that's kind of how I felt about it.
I know exactly what you mean. We accept the reality we're in because that's what we're born into. But like I see it the same way you do. Like I look at it with like a weird sense of fascination because it's all just bullshit.
It's all made up.
It
all
is
made up.
Well, it's like I remember every now and again I'll be sitting there with my dad when I go see him, and he'll just say something that gets me thinking. And I know he does it on purpose. He tries to get my brothers to do it as well, but they're a bit too young. They don't always. Some of them question, but like they don't. I remember sitting there listening to him do it with one of my younger brothers, and he's just a bit too young to like really click into it. But he'll get there. So sitting there, we're chatting one day, and he turns around and he says, "Well, we're not real in the sense that we're basically playing characters." He's like, "You're not really Christian. I'm not really Ryan. We are just playing a character." And I was like, "What do you mean?" And I'm paraphrasing basically what he said, but more or less it's like, these are roles. These are things that you get given, but it's not really you. It's not your soul. It's not why you came here. It's just this character, this thing. Like when you meet someone for the first time, they ask you, "What do you do? What's your job? Where do you live?" Very just kind of like uniform. Are you married? Do you have a girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever? Like they just
the size you up.
Well, there's that, yeah. But it's also just kind of very like conversation, right? It's one of the reasons why I love doing a podcast. I like to have real conversations with people. If I can't have the type of friends where I can talk to you about anything, I don't want to be your friend. And it's nothing to do. It's not against people. It's just I love people whose minds are completely open to the point where nothing is off limits. We just talk about anything. Like 1 minute, all right, we're talking, we're shooting shit. It's a podcast. Ha ha ha. And the next minute we're talking about deep philosophy. Like, why are we here? What is the point of this? What's the meaning of this? Bringing it back to what we were talking about before. I don't know that the average person ever sits there and goes, why am I here? What's the point? Now, if any person has that thought at any point in their life, that's a profound thought. That's a really important point. And if you discover, say you have a child and you discover that they're thinking that way, you should push them to the moon in that direction. Be like, here's another book. Here's another book. Think about this. What about this? Keep positing the questions to that kid and keep pushing them, because that's, and again, it speaks kind of to religion, but it's a sense of enlightenment. It's getting to a new level. It's pushing the boundaries of what there is. I refuse to accept that what we see every day is life, because it's invented, as you say, by people for profit. This isn't why we're here. We weren't born to just, okay, you wake up, you get a job, you work 50 years, you retire, you die. That's not what life is supposed to be. It's what we've invented as a system, but it's not what life is supposed to be.
So going back to what you talked about, where some people don't have inner dialogues, now we have
and it shows.
a population of people that may not have the mental faculties to think at a higher level. What do you do with them?
Okay, so that's another point, though. Well, actually, no, it's the same. What do you do with them? Well, this is the thing I've been banging on about with AI for years. AI right now is replacing jobs. Now, some people go, "Oh, it's great because it frees people up to do things." I'm like, you're missing the point. You have to, if you take one thing, you have to replace it with another. For instance, if I cut down a tree, what should I do? I should plant seeds to grow a new one. But the problem is, it will take years for that tree to grow. Okay? A human being is the same. right? If I take a job away from you, there's not immediately going to be another job available. It will take years for a new job to take its place, to come into fruition. What we've done now is we've eliminated lots and lots of jobs, lots of opportunities. We're essentially replacing the need for humans to do things. But in the process, we are replacing ourselves. There's so much media out there, like so many film series that comment on this. And we talk about it, and yet we don't. The leaders, I guess they're not paying attention, or they want it to happen. I don't know. But we basically, it's like art becomes life, becomes art, you know, or art imitates life, right? Or life imitates art, sorry. The Terminator series, right? I think there's literally, in the Matrix, he literally says, Morpheus says, we in the first film, when he's sitting there and he's showing Neo what the Matrix actually is, he says, we marveled at our own creation as we gave birth to AI. And to me, it sounded spot on. Humans' arrogance. We marveled at our own creation, how wonderful we are. We created this AI. We're doing the same thing right now. We are fascinated by the AI. In the Terminator series, it was the push and the it was kind of just like that pushing thing, like the constant fascination with technology. But the difference there is that technology and robotics were at the same level and moving together. So when they pulled the plug, it clicked at the same time. Whereas right now, robotics is not quite at the same level as AI, but it's rapidly increasing. We're getting there. And there'll be a point when robotics and AI meet and they come together. And then we've really got to start worrying, because not only will AI be able to replace jobs, you know, on a screen, on a system or whatever, it will be able to replace manual labor jobs. So many of the jobs that you see being done by human beings will now be replaced by robots in an instance. Now, the ongoing conspiracy, if you believe in these things, is that it's all being done on purpose so as to force us into becoming a purely consumption-based society. And you can see examples of this in series like Black Mirror, for example. It's why I can't watch that show, because it's too real. It's basically just a documentary at this point. There's a episode in the second season, I believe, second or third season. And basically society is like people... There's not much spoken about what they do outside of these centers, but it's posited that basically like you can exist in certain ways, but most people choose to be in these centers where you can rent a space, and every day you work, you cycle on an exercise bike and you accumulate money that way. And the more you put in, the more you get out. And there's constantly things to kind of distract you and get you to spend your money. Everything from porn to like just food and drink to just consumption. No real job, and like the cycling game that they're playing is just a gamification situation, just playing a pointless game and making money from it, right? Sound familiar? We're already in that society. We just can't see it yet. But the scary thing is that reality is coming closer and closer. And we will get to a point where we won't have choice anymore over where we work. There just won't be work. There's this idea that we want to have universal basic income so that everyone gets money. Kind of similar to like communism in a sense, that everyone has the same thing, but you at least have the choice over how you choose to spend that money. The idea is, we've built a society where everything is in abundance and you don't need to do anything. Everything is done for you. You don't need to do everything because the robots do it for you. A problem with a society like that, I think long term, is if that did happen and it worked for a period of time, humans would get bored and they would be self-destructive, because we need work. We need it for our soul. Not everyone is able to be a consumer. I know, for instance, for myself, if I spend too long not working, I get depressed. I need to work. I need to build. I need to grow. A lot of human beings are like this. The reason why you're seeing in society now people being obsessed with AI and having fun with it and just not really taking it very seriously is because most people in society are consumers, because that's what the system has built into us. You spoke about capitalism. We've been trained. We're born into that. People are used to just spending their money on things and not really thinking much about it. You mentioned earlier about how it doesn't really give you a sense of happiness, really, particularly. And you're right. I've experienced that myself. When you get things in abundance, you get bored, you get complacent. You're like, well, what's the point? When you have to really work for things and then you finally get that thing, nothing is more rewarding than that. Because the odds were against you, because you remember the struggle, you remember all of that stuff.
Do most people value that? Yeah, I feel like most people are fine just being consumers. And
Yeah,
I don't agree
terrifying.
with it, but I'm of the belief that if we ever do end up in a situation where there is universal basic income, that most people will probably just plug into something like the metaverse and live their life in there.
Yeah, I mean, that's what essentially the Black Mirror episode that I was talking about is. And even if you're not plugged into that, I mean, Ready Player One is a good example. If you've ever seen that film, I highly recommend.
No, I haven't.
Go check it out. It's interesting. It is a fun sci-fi film, but if you look at it from the perspective of where we're going, it's kind of terrifying. Basically, the real world is absolutely destroyed. It's a mess. So everyone plugs into this video game and they experience life through that, and they can have battles or they can just live or whatever, but they're all using avatars. They're not their real selves, because it's better than living in the real world. The Matrix is the same principle as well. Like, the real world, if you delve into it, what essentially it says is that humans destroyed their own world and the machines essentially saved it and plugged them into this make-believe system. And, you know, the way they tell the story is that obviously, like, you know, humans are subservient to the machines, but if you really delve into the lore of it, it actually comes as a result of the human beings creating that situation for themselves. So, like, both are kind of to blame for different reasons, you know?
Yeah,
it's one of those.
My view is that the real world will come at a premium, and most people will not have the means to pay for that premium, so they're going to self-select into the virtual world.
Yeah, I agree with you. We're already seeing that in society with subscription-based services. Like, Tesla did it. You have to, like, subscribe to have a car. What? But you do. And if you look at the way subscription tiers work now, it's fascinating. Like, they're constantly raising the subscription prices and having all these different tiers. And the highest tier gets you everything, obviously, but then the basic tier is like pointless. There's no point having the lower tier. You might as well go for the highest tier. But the problem with that is, how can you really justify that long term if everything is a subscription? As you say, eventually people will get priced out. The prices go too high, people don't want to pay for it. Man, this is really dark.
It is, but how do you change it, right? So
that's a very good question.
First of all, let's talk about I don't think people are stepping up enough, and then the question becomes, are they even capable of stepping up enough? Back during World War II, when they were conscripting soldiers, they found that people with like an IQ of 70 or so and lower, if they were to bring them into the military, it made things worse. So that was the cutoff back in like the 1940s. But if you really think about it, that floor has gone higher and higher with every decade because people need to learn more complex skills. So what is the floor today? And I think that floor today is probably higher than what most people realize, but we're just giving people jobs anyways because that's what we were trained to do. But if you really think about it, like, for a lot of people, it may not be beneficial to hire them if they're not able to do the job at the level we require them to. And that's where AI comes in. And that's probably why more and more jobs are going to be lost, not necessarily because people aren't willing to do it, but because people aren't capable of doing it. And it's just more cost effective to not use real people. So then the question becomes, what are we doing with these people? And like I said, I back when I was working at my last job, it was to the point where I probably could have replaced most, if not all, of my employees with AI. And if that were to happen, like what could they have done afterwards? Because their skills were not up to the level that is required of, like, I wasn't in a high tech company. It was a very simple job. So yeah, if the floor keeps rising, what are we going to do with these people? And if history repeats, what will end up happening is that there's going to be further class divide, inequality is going to grow, and then there needs to be some sort of mass death event in order to level out the playing field. In the past, these mass death events have been revolutions, plague, what were the other ones? War, and there's like one more. But yeah, unless there's some kind of inherent redistribution mechanism like UBI, like the situation is just going to keep getting worse and worse until there is some kind of reset in the form of like a mass death situation.
I'm a big fan of Star Trek, right? And I look at the kind of utopia they live in, how it works, and I compare that with where we're at, right? My main takeaway is that we don't put enough resources into science, space exploration, stuff like that. If we focused all of our efforts and time and energy on that, we might get to a point where we can build a society that has abundance, that has the technology to provide food and drink and shelter to everyone. And therefore, if you cover the basic needs, human beings can do anything. They can be anything. UBI wouldn't be the same thing because you're trying to just present a society that can just consume but doesn't grow, change, or have any choice. They're stuck. They become like vegetables. They become vegetables.
So what about people that are incapable of stepping up to what society needs them to be?
Well, there's always going to be differences between human beings because naturally we are all different. And that's kind of what makes a society run, is you have different people performing different types of jobs that are all equally as important. You know, like people can laugh and say like, oh, lower skilled jobs, they mean nothing. But like when those jobs don't get done, you start seeing the problems straight away. Like, hey, oh, that the bins weren't taken out. You start seeing that as a real problem real quickly. You know, it's very important. Just as people performing cutting edge science that comes up with cures for diseases and stuff is equally as important. All of these things need to happen in order for society to function.
But we can't have everybody picking up garbage. We can't have everybody doing those things, right?
Precisely. So you have to find your slot in society. And
that's only if society gives you a slot.
Wow, this is the thing, isn't it? Because right now we live in a society where you have to find your own, which is brutal, but also necessary. But, and if I think this is where you're going, if we build a society where we essentially eliminate the need for most things, then where is your place in society?
Yeah. So you hear like the dilemma in the States where there are job openings, but nobody's filling them up. But despite that, there seems to be not enough jobs, right? And the only way you can really reconcile that is that the people that are looking for jobs, they don't have the skills necessary to fill the jobs that people are looking for, or the roles that people are looking to fill. So and then it kind of comes back to what I was saying, which is that perhaps the floor is too high for many of these people to reach. And there's also the aspect that you were talking about, which is that people are lazy and are not willing to learn. But I do think that the floor is getting higher than what we need. Like, we don't need as many retail workers. We don't need as many people doing these low skill jobs. And like, what do we do with them? Like, so the ideal situation is that an entrepreneur comes along and finds a new way to create value that requires the use of a lot of low skill people, but that's not reality. Like, if something is easy and can be done with low skill labor, it probably is already being done.
Yeah, and normally these things just get quietly replaced, and people just have to find a way to deal with it. Like when we eliminated the need for, say that in the UK is a really good example, right? We used to have a lot of industry in this country. We used to create steel. We had coal mines. We had all sorts. And then basically what we did is we closed them down. We took all the jobs of the workers and we outsourced all of that because it was cheaper to do that. But the problem with that is we eliminated all of our industry. Now the main source of industry in this country is financial services. We do have some exports because we do still produce a little bit, but not nearly what we used to produce. So if people ever wonder, like, oh, why is the UK not a huge power anymore? It's not just because we're not an empire anymore, but it's because we killed our industry and we didn't think long term. And if you don't have industry, then you don't have a system that can kind of exist in of itself, because the whole point is you sell in your country, but also to other countries, and you make money from that. That's why China is so successful. It's not like an overnight thing. Like, we set the stage for that many, many, many years ago, and they took the ball and ran with it. And now they're benefiting from years and years of success of doing that. We could have been in a similar position had we chose to keep our industry and figure out a different way of doing things rather than just outsourcing everything or importing everything.
That's tough though, right? But let's say like you didn't outsource your steel. That doesn't stop China and your competitors from creating steel, and their cost of labor is much lower than yours.
Absolutely.
So inevitably, your steel factories will just shut down from not being competitive. So you have to innovate and come up with a way to produce cheaper steel. But innovation typically means getting rid of workers and automating it.
Or you refocus. So let's take that point. Okay, let's say it's too expensive to create steel. We get to a point where we just can't do it sustainably anymore. Right, so we pull out of that. But then we reinvest into another source of industry that we produce, that we make. Life is all about adapting and overcoming. You know? You have to adjust.
I 100% agree. If someone can come along and create a new product with utilizing the existing skill for a labor force and whatnot, and that product has demand for it, then yes, that could have saved your country's industry.
And the thing is, it can still be saved. We can still create here. And anytime you create something, and let's say you need like factories to produce, lo and behold, that now jobs are created. You know, there's always potential for jobs to be created.
The economics might not make sense, right? Because I don't know what the labor rate is in the UK, but like,
I'm not an expert on this. I'm just kind of talking like generally speaking, but. No,
it's so easy to copy now. That's the thing, right? So somebody come up with something that's genius, and you can hire a bunch of UK natives to run the factory. But then somebody in China can be like, "Hey, I can do that with workers that cost 20% of the labor, and all of the infrastructure is cheaper because it's all closer in China." So now you have a competing product that's coming out of China, and we know that people don't really care about place of manufacture; they just care about price. So it's going to be really tough to compete in that situation.
Plus, you're competing in China, there's a lot of situations where people don't get paid or paid anything at all. You know, there's a lot of like labor exploitation there. So you're competing with that. From a business perspective, you're competing with that. And it's impossible to compete with unpaid labor. Now, again, I'm not saying that all labor out there is unpaid. I'm just saying in certain instances. And there's been proof of this.
Well, we don't have to go that far, right? We can just say that we know that their hourly rate over there is like, let's say $4 an hour compared to whatever it is in the UK. Like, just that alone, makes it, if they do everything above board, they're still going to be hyper competitive.
Yeah, and they will continue to be. And we need to find a way to move past that. And I'm not sure how we're going to do it in this country. I worry about the future. It's pretty bad in the UK right now, economy wise. Like I saw, like every April, it's a big running joke here, but our minimum wage goes up, right? But obviously, inflation goes up, everything else goes up, so it's pointless. It's literally pointless. The wages have to be increased in order for people to be able to afford anything, but people can't afford anything anyway because those things keep increasing. So it's literally pointless. It's just such a ludicrous thing. They're like, oh, we've increased wages. And it's like, yeah, but it doesn't matter. You have to. And if you didn't, there'd be an uproar.
Yeah. So you really see it, right? Where society is kind of just shaped in a way to stop the uproar from happening and nothing more.
Yeah, but I think they're running out of ways to do that now because things are getting very desperate, and there's only so much you can ask of your people before they start to revolt. And some people are more, some are more vocal than others. Like I've always admired the French for how like vocal they are and how they're very organized with protests, and they're kind of crazy with it, but they get action, and
But what has been the long-term result of that though? The long-term result is that the French are uncompetitive on the world stage now.
Well, there you go. But, the French people get what they want, do they not?
In the short term. But in the long term, who knows what that's going to look like, right? Because if you're not able to compete in the international stage, their quality of life is going to continue to drop. So if your quality of life drops and you expect more from your government, that means taxes have to go up.
But this is the thing. Governments don't explain these things in such clear terms, and they almost never do things that basically. Like, for instance, taxes are going up here all the time, but we're not seeing improvements in things. Like our council taxes keep going up, and I can show you like a million potholes where you just be like, that's like a crater. And I'm like, yeah. So where's the money going? Like things like that. Like I'm all for paying into a system and getting money from that system. Like, for instance, the NHS is a good example of that. We pay a thing here called national insurance, which goes towards that. Makes sense to me. You get a free healthcare system. Technically, it's not free because you're paying into it, but you're not paying like tens of thousands of pounds. You're paying a little bit of money every month, and you benefit from that service. But it's overrun.
The issue ends up being that government ends up being inefficient. I have like a perfect example of that in Canada. Cataract surgery. I'm not an expert here, but in the past, cataracts used to be the surgery to heal or to this. I don't know if you're fixing it or whatnot, but the procedure involved many doctors, many hours, and it was billed at a very high rate. But then technology developed, and now you're able to do it in like half an hour. So all the people that were doing cataract surgeries ended up becoming millionaires because the billing was still based off the old method, and they were just like churning through these like half an hour rates compared to like the previous 6 hours, whatever it took. So that's where government's inefficient, because if the private market were to have done that, the cost of the surgery would have just gone down, and it wouldn't have been such a burden on taxpayers. But, if I were an ophthalmologist or whoever it was that does it, I'd be extremely happy.
Yeah, if you can get less for more, happy days.
Yeah.
That's why I love like half
it's so
days.
Interesting.
When I do like acting, and I get like a day where not needed for the full day. So it's like, great. Still get paid. Full rate.
Yeah.
Happy days.
If you're able to benefit from it, why not, right?
What has philosophy taught you about life?
Okay, so are you familiar with determinism?
Yes.
Yeah. So for the audience, determinism is the idea that like essentially it's like fate, where the things that happen in the past influence the future. And when you think about it that way, at least the same way I do, it makes a lot of sense. And you kind of start seeing the world in terms of math. So for example, when you toss dice, if you're able to calculate the velocity and the angles and the surface and everything that it bounces off of, you could theoretically determine what the size of those dice are the moment you toss the dice. But what if you were to take it one step further, right? So right now for humans, we haven't confirmed what thought is. We don't know what thought is. But what if everything is all just electrical signals and neurochemicals happening in your brain, and that is what dictates your actions and everything that you do? That's all based in real life and physics as well. So you could calculate all of that. You could essentially determine how hard somebody would throw the dice before they even tossed it. So if you think about determinism in that sense, then literally everything is just math. And you can kind of just use that as a way to not necessarily predict the future, but make assumptions about the future. Does that kind of make sense? Do I need to go any deeper in any ideas like that? Yeah. So that's kind of how I see the world now. It's fascinating. I wish I could show you what it's like inside my head sometimes. But for example, let's take content creation as a YouTuber, right? Success as a YouTuber is based on a couple of things, right? Number one is how many people did you reach? Number two is how good is your content? And you can control for that. So an idea here is surface area. The more things I touch, the higher the likelihood is that something can go exponential and become like viral, right? So I just need to put myself out there more often, which is why I do things like go on podcasts and make videos. And I should be putting out more shorts, but I don't agree with shorts. That's a different story. But it's the same thing in like dating, right? Like if you want to find a mate, you just want to talk to more people, and there's just like a probability that one of them will convert into a mate. And it's weird to think about it like that, but yeah, I kind of just see everything as like math now.
I mean, you're certainly in the right place for YouTube, because a lot of people would agree with you. That's how Mr. Beast makes a living, isn't it? It's like studying the algorithm to the point where it's like you're just rinsing it for everything it's worth. But there's a certain amount of truth to that. Sometimes like I'll drop my videos at the time that YouTube says most of my viewers and listeners are on. It makes no difference, but I like to play with it and just see if anything will make a difference.
It could make a difference. You never know, right?
Well, that's the thing. I've been doing this a long time, about 7 years now. I've been doing YouTube, podcasting, live streaming. I've done short form content, mid-tier content, long form content. Obviously, I produce music. I do acting, voice acting. I've done skits. I've done comedy. You name it, I've tried it. I've tried posting every single day. I've tried posting 3 times a day. I've literally done it all and seen and done it all. I can tell you, when I had viral content, nothing came of it other than I managed to get like 20k on a TikTok account, which I remember someone said years ago, and I agree with this. They were like, "Oh, 1 million views on TikTok is like 1,000 views on YouTube," and I was like, "Yeah, that's pretty fair." But the thing that it taught me is that virality doesn't really account for much. It's long term that matters.
Well, virality increases exposure, right? And
sure, but you need an audience. You need like that's going to go down. Okay, like numbers don't really account for much. What matters is the relationships you build with the people that are there. Right, your audience, your target audience, whoever you've actually reached. Like I have like 1,700 on YouTube, right? I'm not even monetized yet. I don't get enough watch hours, and I've done all the things you're supposed to do, right? But it's not work. There's a million reasons why that might be the case. There's a million reasons why that might not be the case. Some of it just comes down to luck. I don't really have the answer. Studying the algorithm.
I don't want to say I don't believe in luck.
Okay.
But like, imagine if the world is deterministic, then luck is simply you not knowing all the values and you being impacted by values that you don't understand. So, like a random example, like people getting hit by a stray bullet, right? If you knew that stray bullet was coming, you would dodge it. It's not necessarily lucky. It's a lack of information. So my philosophy is, if you can do anything if you know how to do it, because the world is not truly random.
So he's saying, the reason I'm not successful is I just don't know enough.
Well, if you knew how to become successful, you'd be successful, right?
Great way of putting it. I love this guy.
Yeah,
it's
like,
solid.
This is where my deep dives into random academic studies has become fruitful, because I'm able to understand, well, not understand, but like think about these things. Like the only true source of random that in the world that we believe exists, we haven't confirmed if this is truly random or not, is quantum mechanics, where we believe that there seems to be, I forget what the name of it is, but sorry, let me try to dive into my brain and see if I can remember. The point is, the only thing that is truly random in the world that we believe to be truly random in the world is quantum mechanics. But it could also just be that we don't fully understand it, and that it's deterministic as well. So based on if you believe everything else is deterministic, then as long as you understand what all the variables are, you should be able to like use it to your advantage.
No, I completely agree with you. I've always looked at fascination with my content. I've always wished that I could have someone like work for me and figure it out, because I feel like the content's good. It's just how it's presented and like how to, you know what I'm saying? Like, because
have you tried hiring somebody for this?
I don't have the money, dude.
Yeah,
that's the thing. Like, I would love to, and people have offered, and I'm like, I can't pay you, you know, because everything's about money.
What if by paying somebody and by investing the capital on it, do you see a path towards getting a return on that investment?
Yes.
Right? So if you do see that path, then you should do it. Because you think about it, like, if you believe that the only reason why...
I would if I had the money to invest, because it's never been a case of willingness. I'd do it tomorrow if I was able to. But like
I'm not going to tell you to take out a loan and do it, because I don't know your situation. But yeah.
Well, I wouldn't be able to anyway. I'm in a dire financial situation. I'm between jobs, and to be honest, I'm using this time as effectively as I can creatively while I try to figure out my life, because I don't know what's next. It's hard. Like when your life is, I don't know if I'm going to eat tomorrow, I don't know if I'm going to survive tomorrow, like, you do tend to look at things a bit differently. And of course, like, doing this for such a long time has an impact as well. But yeah, purely from a business perspective, I've seen it happen with YouTube channels. Like, for instance, I quite like wrestling content, but I'm not really plugged into the modern product. But it's cool and interesting to see like wrestlers gone by, or wrestlers who maybe are still involved, but like on a limited scale. So they're just like being interviewed by someone who's managing their channel, right? They'll have, like, there's a good guy. Here's an example. There was a wrestler called Maven years ago. He was in the WWE for about, I don't know, 5 years. Okay. Then he moved on with his life, did other things. And he set up a YouTube channel a couple of years ago. I don't know how many subscribers it's got, but it's got a lot. It's got a lot of views. And it looks and feels different to all of the wrestling YouTube channels that are out there. Kind of leans more into like classic wrestling style. Sorry, classic YouTube style as far as like the formatting and everything. But it works well because it's him reacting to content, modern stuff, people talking about wrestling, whatever. And you can tell that the person that is helping him with it is doing research and figuring out like, oh, we could try this, we could try this, we could post it this time, we could use this thumbnail, we can, you know what I mean? Like all the things that you're supposed to trial. I would love to have that support, but I need the investment, I need the money, and you got to have people behind you.
I think AI is amazing because AI has helped me. For example, when I do my set, I don't know anything about building sets. So I would take a screenshot and I would send it to AI and be like, what is wrong with this image? And it'll tell me everything. It'll be like, this is wrong, your lighting's wrong, everything like that. And that's like one of the ways how I was able to like level up my set game. And it's not just that, it's like a bunch of other things too, where there's a gap in my knowledge and I'm able to fill it with AI rather than spending capital.
Well, I'll certainly do more research myself. Like I've said, I've used it for Riverside AI, which has been an interesting journey because I used to do like a Zoom podcast and I'd edit everything myself, which seems crazy now. Like I can't imagine doing that now because now it just goes directly into Riverside and it creates all the stuff for you. And it always seems to clip the stuff that I would have probably clipped myself, to be honest. You know, so it took me a lot because I clipped stuff for like 4 years and then I stopped doing it. And then for like a year, I didn't do it. And people were like, you should clip. And I'm like, I did it for 4 years, man. And then I was like, I should clip again. But I don't want to do it myself because of all the time it took. And I can't afford to pay someone. And then I discovered Riverside. Oh, it sounds like a fucking advert again.
It's a good product, right? It's a good product.
I wish I could get sponsored because I could sell anything, man. I believe it. I could sell a dying man in health insurance. I believe it. But anyway, there is something that's interesting about it because it seems to, I think over time, understand you better as well and what you're looking for. Like I remember it used to get my certain things about my name and other things wrong. It doesn't get that wrong anymore. That's interesting.
The products are only getting better, man.
Yeah, it's machine learning, but it's good in that sense. And like you said, it's great when it's as an assistant kind of tool thing. Fantastic. But yeah, like when you put all this stuff online, it's unpredictable. You know, I mean, I've been doing this 6 years. Over 350 plus episodes. There's like a whole bank of content there. I've trialed like posting older content as well, seeing how that might do. Nothing really ever changes, but it's also like I've saved time now as well by not having to invest all my time in like editing, which I hated. I love this. This is the best part, doing the actual show. But the editing and the social media and the promotion is so thankless. It's a necessary part of it, but if you can use AI and use a tool or have a staff, it really just changes everything for you. And it means that you have more freedom and space to do what you love, which is the important thing. And that's going to come across in the product.
Yeah. Like, for example, you can set AI up in a way to automatically post your clips on TikTok or X or whatnot. Like, I need to get around to this, but the main thing is that AI costs money as well.
Yeah.
But I could set up like a OpenClaw to scrape my scripts, figure out what the best parts are, and just like have it automatically post on X, snippets from my videos every couple hours.
One way of looking at it. I need to look into this more because I feel like I'm only scratching the surface with this, but we'll see. Before we move on, I want to ask, why don't you like YouTube Shorts? I'm not letting you get away with it.
It seems like most of the research is saying that it's probably bad for people's health and mental capabilities in the long term. It seems to be dropping people's ability to focus. And even for myself, like back when I tried short form content, hours of my life would go by in like a blink of an eye. So overall, I don't think that it's a positive for society. And
okay.
It's like, this is actually one of the reasons why I left cannabis as well, which was that 1 in 4 people that use cannabis get addicted to it. And a lot of the people that are getting addicted to it and having their life go in a negative trajectory are children. And I just didn't really want to be a part of that. And if I believe that for shorts as well, I'm not quite sure if I want to be contributing to that.
What if the content is snippets from what you're doing, though? Is that not like a positive in some way? Because I mean, you're making like profound points, assertions, judgments, etc., right? And sometimes that can be a gateway into things. For instance, like I couldn't sit here and say that having short form clips for the podcast is not valuable in some way, because it does drive content and it does push people to go check out a full show, Yeah,
I understand that point of view. But it's kind of like with cannabis as well. I think that cannabis can have profoundly positive impacts on people's lives. But the fact that it not ruins, but the fact that like 1 in 4 people get addicted to it and could potentially get ruined, it's a pretty big negative. And I'm not quite sure if the negatives, if the positives can offset that negative. For shorts, once again, I'm open. I have produced some shorts, and I'm open to producing more, but I'm not 100% convinced that I need them yet.
Fair play. Let's move it forward. Final couple of questions for you to round things out for today. What's the worst advice you've ever received?
Worst advice I've ever received. I can't think of one in particular, but what a more interesting thing I think that people would want to hear is that I used to think I was like a complete idiot because that's what my teachers and my parents would tell me. So not necessarily advice, but it I wouldn't say negatively, but it impacted how I viewed myself going through life, where I thought that, I was the kind of kid in school that, would always get in trouble, would fail. I would fail courses and get put in detention and whatnot. And this is kind of where, going back to the delusion thing, was that a delusion? Was I truly an idiot, or were people just telling me that? And because I believed it, it shaped the way I behaved and it shaped my reality. So in a way,
that's interesting.
Yeah, in a way, it's not necessarily advice. Maybe the advice was don't be an idiot, but I truly did believe that I was, top of the curve.
It's crazy as well. When I think about school, I had a similar experience to you. I really did. I felt I was stupid. People led me to believe that, but it wasn't true. And all it took was one teacher to really push me as well. I've told this story many times, but I was failing all my courses. There was a business course that I was doing, and they lost my work. It was crazy. So I was just demotivated, didn't care. And we got a new teacher. She took over as head of department as well. And I always felt like the best teachers tended to be parents, people that had kids. She had a son, I seem to remember. 2 boys, I think. Anyway, she sat down with me and she was like, I can see how you're doing. What's your goal here? Like, what do you want to achieve? And I got really annoyed at that because I was like, she would have known about the lost work. She would have known that I was failing. And, you know, I was a teenager. I was a smart aleck. I was a smart ass, you know? So I was sarcastic and I was like, oh, I want to ace the course. You know, because I was failing, so there's no way. And she just went quiet. And then she turned around and she said, well, you're going to have to work very hard then, aren't you? And I remember just thinking like there's a chance? And she's like, yeah. I was like, are you serious? And she was like, yeah. And she was like, and I'll help you get like to achieve that goal. And for the first time, I was like, I actually believed that someone wanted to help. I ran with it. I was like, okay, I'll trust you. Let's do this. And I went from failing the course to like acing it, being like top of the class, top marks. Went on to do the next course, same thing. And I realized, oh, I was never stupid. It was just like people's attitudes and people making me feel a certain way. Exactly what you said. It frames your reality. And school, I think what I realized about school, I didn't realize it then. I had inklings, but I didn't really realize it. School tries to put you in a box, but
Tries to put you in the matrix.
Well, yeah. I mean, like if you think about it as well, like school is designed for different things. Like in the UK, we have a very archaic, outdated system. Okay, that was built for people post-war. It's like factory workers. It was supposed to kind of get you into jobs. And that was it, right? And so obviously like over time that adapted, but it was still principally the same system. And it's so heavily outdated and it's been criticized to death at this point, but they don't seem to ever change it. Like there's stuff on the curriculum now that was on there when I was there and was on there like 30 years before that. You know, that's crazy. Some things can stand the test of time, sure, but you need to update it with every generation and live in the now, right? But just the structure and the way it was designed was terrible. But the key thing I remember is that my school taught this, that other schools didn't. But the teachers, like, it's like my English teacher was brilliant, my maths teacher was terrible. And I would have situations where like the maths teacher would be like, oh, Christian, Miss Woolman tells me that you work hard in her class, but you don't work hard in mine. And I'm like, but it's different though, because in her class, she makes me feel intelligent and takes what I say seriously. When I ask you for help, you say no, you say detention, you say you're not trying hard enough. They would do pardon my language, mindfuck stuff. Like, if you have a problem, ask me and I'll come over and help you. So I'd be like, Miss, I need help. And then she'd be like, why don't you understand this? Everyone else understands this. Why don't you understand this? I've been talking about this for da-da-da-da-da-da. And then I was like, well, everybody learns differently. Just because everyone learned that way doesn't mean I'm going to get it in the same way. Like, I actually believe I had some chance with maths. Sometimes I would actually get it. But because I question everything a bit too much, I would overthink it and I didn't have confidence in it. And, you know, in the end, I ended up like not doing well in that. But there was every chance that I could have at least got a better grade in that. The teachers failed me in that. Yeah, I don't like to blame things on other people, but at school I do, because I looked at their attitudes as teachers. And some of these teachers had no business being teachers. I remember in my German class, shout out to Herr Robert Shaw. I knew what you were doing. I called you out on it on the day. He divided the class up physically into... Left-hand side of the class was like A-star students. Middle of the class was like B, C tier, right? And then far right, where we were, was just kids that were going to fail. Because I remember we all looked at each other, took a quick look, looked around the class, and we were like, oh, I see what's going on. Like, come on, we all knew we were failing. And I called him out on it. I said, this was the important thing. Why are you spending all your time on the A-star students, but no time on us? We have a chance to still get a C grade, which was like the standard level, because we couldn't get higher than that for some reason. We were capped at that. And he was like, oh, because you've just not put the effort in. And I'm like, well, I want to, and I want you to help me. Please help me. And they would just refuse and just have a bad attitude. You know?
That's awful.
Yeah, it is. But the critical thinking one was the biggest one. There was two things that the teachers constantly told me to do. They said, stop talking, stop asking so many questions. Think about those two things. I've said this on the show before, but in the context of our conversation, it's very important. If you don't ask questions, you never learn. Everything I do involves asking questions and learning. I couldn't do a podcast without asking questions. It's literally what the show is.
Sorry, your critical thinking class told you to stop asking questions?
There wasn't, I think there was later on, but no, in different subjects. Like there was a critical thinking class. I remember learning it, but in maths, for example, they'd say stop asking questions, or it just is, which is not true. There's a lot of different ways of doing things. Like sometimes I discover like a different way of doing something, and they would be like, "Oh, no, you have to do it this way," and I'm like, "Why?" And they're like, "Stop asking questions, just accept it." And I'm like, "But I need to understand what I don't understand. I need to understand why." You're saying it has to be done this way. I'm saying I found other ways to do it. So why do I have to do it your way? What makes your way superior? What makes my way wrong if we get the same answer? Stop asking questions, Christian. Do you see what I mean? Like they just want you to follow orders and just, okay, I will do what I'm told. Okay, yes. They just want yes men. They don't want thinkers.
Thinkers cause problems.
Yeah. I mean, that's one way of looking at it, but yeah, I would argue that. It disrupts the equilibrium. It disrupts the status quo. You know, they don't want thinkers. They want people that will shut up and do what they're told. That's what the workforce is.
Going back to your thing about advice, if I had to say the worst piece of advice if I had to say what would be the worst piece of advice, is to work hard. And the reality is, working hard in the wrong direction will get you nowhere. So
interesting.
the proper advice is work hard in the right direction, but you really got to figure out what the right direction is.
All right. What's the best advice you've ever received?
The best advice I've ever received. This is more so a memory of me reading something on a sheet of paper. It's back in first grade. There was something, I was sitting at my desk and I forget exactly what it was, but the line was something along the lines of critical thinking is one of the most important skills to learn. I had no idea what that meant at that time, but that line has influenced my life from that point onwards because I always tried to get better at critical thinking. So I would attribute it to that. That sheet of paper that gave me the advice to really focus on critical thinking was one of the things that set me on the trajectory of my life to bring me to where I am now.
Honestly, I think it's the most important skill a human being can have, is the ability to question things.
Especially today with AI, right? And the modern age where everybody's trying to spread disinformation and misinformation.
I think people accept too much on face value without asking questions, and then they wonder why they get screwed over or why they are misinformed, as you said, or you know what I mean? Like, I've questioned things since day one, and not because I'm an outlier or because I'm just trying to cause trouble, but because I was always trying to understand, and because I never accepted, oh, well, this is the case because this person said so. Okay, but what are their credentials? Where's their proof? Where's the source? What is the source? Who's backing the source? You know, these things matter.
A lot of the things that we used to believe are true turned out to be false.
Yeah. Well, so
right?
I remember hearing years ago, someone said, like, if you question someone enough and you expose a flaw in their belief system, they will defend that belief system even though they know it's wrong. Because it's their belief, it's who they are. It's intrinsic to their person, their character. It's very hard to accept something that goes against your beliefs, even though it's fact. So
it's very similar to the saying, which is that, like, you can't logic somebody out of an argument they didn't logic themselves into.
I am confusion. But I get it.
Right?
What's the biggest life lesson you've learned so far?
The biggest life lesson is, for me at least, is to do what makes you happy and not necessarily do what other people tell you will make you happy. Like, for me, other people told me that I needed to make money and I needed a job, that I needed to do all these things. And when I did them, I didn't really feel anything. That's part of what really started making me question of all these things about what it is that society pushes on people and whether or not it's correct. Hopefully that answers your question. I've kind of, like, money is great. Don't get me wrong. Everybody could use more, but that shouldn't be your objective, right? Your objective should be making the most out of your time on the planet, because at the end of the day, what money does is it buys you the way to spend the time, the way to spend your time you want. But you just have to make sure that you're actually like that your wants are actually yours and not what other people tell you they should be.
I think we're very much like kindred spirits, Quang, because I believe a lot of what you say, and I can relate to a lot of it. And coming full circle, you know, when you spoke about your reasonings behind why you chose to leave that remote job and delve into this career, you said that, you know, it's partly about regrets. You know, you don't want to get to the end of your days and be like, man, I just did like what everyone else expected of me and told me to do rather than what I wanted to do. And it's like, when I look at my life, am I happy with where it is? No. Am I happy about what I've experienced and what I've learned and what I've done? Yeah. You know, it's made me who I am. I wouldn't be the man I am today were it not for the experiences I've had. And, you know, I'm not rich, I'm not successful, I'm not any of these things, but I do feel rich and enlightened in life, and I feel like I have a lot to give. Like, for instance, I'm getting to the age now, you know, I've met the right person and I'm going to have kids somewhere down the line in the sort of mid-tier future, right? And I do look at a lot about life and where I'm at now and what I've learned, and I'm like, would I make a good father? And I think I will, but only because of what I've learned in life so far. And I feel like, you know, that would be a good reason to, like, something, what can I give? Well, I can tell them a lot about what I've learned in life. You know, I might not have all the money in the world. I might not be, you know, able to set them up for life, but I'll be able to give them important life lessons and life advice that's invaluable, that might steer them in the right direction, potentially. You know, and I
definitely understand where you're coming from.
You know, I think it's these important things in life that really, they are the driving force, or they should be the driving force, not money.
Yeah, and for me, I really have to thank all of the people that came before me, right? All the people that spent 40, 50 years of their life inside a job and then regretted it at the end of it. If I didn't hear their stories, then I might have done the same thing, right? So it's a weird thing to think about. The regrets of others have put me on a path of less regret, if you think about it that way.
I get what you're saying, yeah. Whenever I hear... This is the crazy thing, though. Like, I'll hear people complain and be bitter. I used to grow up with that. And then, like, they try to get you to do what they did rather than, like, not what they did. It's like they want to bring you down with them, which I don't get that. Like, if I struggled and, like, everything was just a failure, and then, like, I had a kid or something, I'd be like, listen, don't do what I did. Do the opposite and you'll succeed, or whatever, you know. I wouldn't want them to struggle the way that I struggle, because I think, like, we should try and teach each other and educate each other, and you should want the best for people. But unfortunately, that not all human beings are like that. A lot of human beings are self-centered and they want others to suffer, or they're bitter, and I never got that. You know,
it's because when you can't get to the level of others, you want to drag others to your level.
Oh,
I don't agree with it, but I believe that's what they believe.
Yeah, and it's awful. Yeah. I mean, listen, I envy a great many people, right? I wish I was as successful as them. I wish I had their opportunities, their chances, but I'm never jealous of them. I never hate them for it, because it's so much of it is luck of the draw, and it's good to see people succeeding. And it kind of gives you hope for yourself, you know. I mean, for every year that passes, I have less and less hope. I'm just being honest, but you know, at the same time, I look at it like, well, if you've got hope in life, you've got something to roll with. But if you're just bitter and sitting there and not doing anything about it, like that's the worst place to be, because you only have yourself to blame. No one's going to feel sorry for you. I don't feel sorry for people that are bitter and feel sorry for themselves. I don't feel sorry for you at all. You've chosen that. I've had people attack me and be like, "Oh, when are you going to give it up, Christian? You know, like I gave it up. You should give it up." And I'm like, that was your decision. Don't project your negativity on me. You know, like I'm still chasing my dreams. You gave up. You chose that. You should live with it. You know, don't drag the rest of us down. There we go.
Yeah, no, it's unfortunate, but I think that the way how I see it, and the way how many describe it, is that life's a journey, and the journey is probably the more important part, because a lot of people, they hit their destination and they don't know what to do next.
That's one thing I figured out quite early on, is even if I do achieve the success I want, I know that I'm going to have to quickly figure out the next goal. That's good. I just, you know, once you understand yourself, know yourself, you understand how you work. And I know for me, it's always about creating and working on projects, working towards a goal. There always has to be a goal. There always has to be a purpose, because that's the driving force. Because as you say, if you don't have a goal, if you don't have a driving force, you become complacent, you become irritable, you become miserable, you become directionless.
I'm actually of the opinion that depression is probably caused by a lack of goals. I mean, I'm sure there's more to it than that, but most people that experience depression, I truly do believe is because they don't have an objective in life.
I completely agree. Or they don't see the point anymore. Like I really resonate with people that get depressed. I've experienced it myself. You don't see the point, and it becomes numb, and you have to really pull yourself out of that. Like pull yourself out of the depths of despair and hell to get through it. And I've always used working on goals as a coping mechanism. You know, whenever I've had the darkest times in my life, I was like, right, build, grow, work on something, you know, and it really, really helped me. It really did. I remember about 3 years ago, I had a really bad experience, and I threw myself back into work, creative stuff. And some people said I shouldn't. They said I should take a break. And I was like, no, I'm going to throw myself in completely and make this my focus. And it helped, and it got me out of that pit that I was in and made me work towards something positive. And here we are. You know?
Yeah, I can definitely relate. When I was deciding to leave my role, I would say that I was probably in a state of depression where...
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I remember like walking down the stairs and being like, you know what? If I just fell down the stairs and broke myself, I'd probably feel better than going to work. And
wow. Okay.
Yeah. So I definitely like resonate with what you said there.
So that's because you didn't mention that earlier when you were talking about reasons why you left your job. That's huge.
Yeah, so it was probably the second time I've had depression, and it is huge. It's just not something I think about anymore, because I want to say recovered from it mostly. It took about 3 months, but yeah, it was in that state that I really started questioning everything. Right, like what am I doing all this for? Like why am I like hating this? Why am I doing something I hate to make money when the money isn't like offsetting the depression?
It sounds like a point of disillusionment as well. Like I had a similar experience when I was at uni. Like I was studying a degree in marketing, and I remember in the second year, I stopped and looked around the lecture hall at all these people, and I was like, I'm not like these people. I don't want to be captain of LinkedIn or, you know, whatever else they care about. Like they live in this fake world, and they talk to each other in this like fake language. And it's all just a lie. And I don't want any part of it. I want real conversations. I want authenticity. I want love. I want the arts. I get what you mean. Because it's like you do things up to a point, and then you just kind of stop and look and go, this is all bullshit. All of it. And people will try and convince you, like, oh, just hang with it, stick with it. And it's like, once you've made your mind up, it's like, no, it's time to leave.
it's strange, right? Because they say that this is how it should be, but why is that the case? It's only the case because it's what we fabricated to keep the peace.
I mean, if chasing work has taught me anything, it's that there's more than one way to do things. It doesn't just have to be option A. There's option B, there's option C, there's option D, etc. But people don't want to take the risk. They want to play it safe. Let me tell you this. There is no such thing as playing it safe. It doesn't exist.
Well,
it just doesn't.
You need to understand that every action is a gamble. And if you don't understand that, it means that you don't understand the odds. So, for example, a buddy of mine doesn't want to quit his job. He's like, no, I like my job and I think it's going to be more stable because I think that there's going to be a need for this in the future. I don't want to gamble away my future on like a business. But I told him, you're gambling your future believing that that your job is going to be there in 7 years' time. You just don't understand that.
Does he have money to invest?
Yeah. He's in the position where he definitely can start his own business or whatever it is.
Sooner or later, he's going to have to. Because you do see the writing on the wall. I had it with a marketing job years ago. And this was before AI, but I could already see, like, I was doing manual analytics and things like Power BI were coming into fruition. And I was like, I'm not going to have a job in 6 months. I was like, I need to quit now. And I did. I moved on. And I was right. You know, now, and especially now it's all just purely computers. You don't need anyone to do it, you know. We'll move. A final question for you to round things up for today. Do you have any final or upcoming projects that you'd like to promote, talk about, or final thoughts that you'd like to share with our listeners?
You know, I'd just like to say, if you like the way I think about the world, then really check out my YouTube channel because I'm really, it's really an avenue for me to express the mechanisms of what I believe the world to be, especially since, like, I do believe that the world seems to be deterministic and seems to be just math. And if that's the case, you should be able to make models for everything. So that's what I'm doing in my videos. Actually, I'll go back to one of the other reasons why I started entrepreneurship with philosophy, which is that a lot of the entrepreneurs that I look up to, they often say that life is like a game and to play the game. And I didn't know what that meant. It's something that I thought I was playing the game of life, and I was just kind of like, why do I feel like I'm losing when, according to other people's measures, I should be winning? So I really thought a lot about what it meant for life to be a game. And a lot of that will be reflected in my videos. Like, for example, in my most recent video, I talk about how in life you're mainly playing 3 different games, which is PvP, player versus player, PvE, player versus environment, and the last one is PvMe, because a big part of a big obstacle in the way of you getting your goals is yourself. And the thing is, there are actual mechanisms here, right? So, for example, one of the reasons why people like security and one of the reasons why people don't like taking risk is because in the past, taking risks often meant dying. So it's like hardwired into us to not take risks. But if you understand the mechanisms behind that and you start understanding that the risks don't end in catastrophic failure, it becomes easier to take risks. Like I said, if you are like me and you believe that the world can be broken down into math, then you can understand the probabilities behind everything.
Absolutely. Completely agree. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on the podcast. I could talk to you forever. I barely asked you any of my questions because it was just one of those beautiful shows you get sometimes where you just click with someone and it's like when the butter is melted properly and it's not hard and it just goes on the toast perfectly and you're like, c'est magnifique. Absolute pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Oh, no, thank you. I wish you the very best with your YouTube channel. I'd love to have you on the show again. And yeah, just all the best, man. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Pleasure. And to all the listeners of the Christian Reeve Podcast, make sure you go and subscribe to Quang on YouTube. I'll make sure there's a link in the bio for all our listeners and viewers of the show. I hope that you enjoyed this show as much as I did. As always, be safe, be well, and I'll see you in the next one.
Feels like they used to. Can't place your bets on the 9 to 5. Things don't work like they used to. No, there's not enough to keep you alive.